Welcome to NYC Now. I'm Janae Pierre. A new Netflix docuseries re-examines the legacy of America's Next Top Model. The reality series premiered back in 2003 and featured aspiring models who compete in weekly challenges to launch their careers. On today's episode, we talk with a former contestant about the way the show has aged and its controversies. But first, here's what's happening in New York City. The Mamdani administration is moving quickly to vacate the massive men's homeless shelter on Manhattan's East Side. The mayor's office says the site is in a state of severe disrepair. Some residents there say they were shocked to learn the facility was closing and that they'd be moved to another shelter. Lamont Jones has been living at the 30th Street site for 4 months and says he wants to be able to stay in Manhattan.
I have a relative that's on a deathbed, and I'm the only one left here to take care of her, to go see her, to go check her out. You know, and if I leave and they send me to Brooklyn, and I get a call from the doctor and I need to rush back over here, I may not make it in time.
The shelter also houses the only check-in site for single men and families without children who want a shelter bed. Officials say those services will be relocated downtown. New York Attorney General Letitia James and attorneys general across the U.S. are suing the Trump administration once again, this time over a new tariff plan.
This latest attempt is nothing more than an effort to sidestep the Supreme Court and impose tariffs that the president does not have the authority to enact.
The president issued a new proclamation imposing tariffs on many countries and a wide range of goods after the Supreme Court ruled Trump's original tariffs were illegal. The lawsuit argues that the new tariffs violate a federal law that requires tariffs be applied non-discriminatorily. The tariffs exempt some goods from Canada, the Dominican Republic, and other countries. The White House says the Trump administration will vigorously defend the president's new round of tariffs in court. The 82nd edition of the Whitney Biennial officially opens on Sunday. The exhibition is the longest-running survey of contemporary art in the U.S. The 2026 Biennial will feature 56 artists from across the world. Together, they'll represent a wide range of art at the Whitney. This year's Biennial runs through August 23rd. Still ahead, the problematic legacy of America's Next Top Model. The show, produced by supermodel Tyra Banks, is the subject of a new Netflix docuseries. We'll talk with one of the contestants after the break. Stick around. Welcome back. Do you remember a show called America's Next Top Model? It took the world by storm when it premiered in the early 2000s. The reality series was created by supermodel Tyra Banks and featured aspiring models who lived together in Midtown Manhattan while competing in weekly challenges to launch their careers. For those interested in pursuing a modeling career, New York City is arguably the best place to do it. It's a global hub for fashion and commercial opportunities. Though the Big Apple offers unrivaled exposure and high-profile agency representation, it's extremely competitive and requires thick skin. Simply put, the show aged poorly. A new Netflix docuseries looks into the many controversies it presented, including scenes of fat shaming, forced and humiliated makeovers, and even photo shoots in blackface. In a social media post, Tyra Banks responded to the insensitivity of some past moments on the show and said, quote, "I agree with you. Looking back, those were some really off choices," end quote. Season 1, or Cycle 1 as it's called, included 10 contestants. Most of the contestants on the first season flew in to chase their New York City dreams. But one of them, Ebony Haith, she was born in it and grew up in Harlem. Hey, Ebony, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So happy to have you here.
Happy to be here.
Let's get to Top Model. You were 23, 24?
Yes, when the show aired, when I was eliminated like 2 days before my birthday.
Oh, that sucks.
Horrible. And I was about going on 24. So by the time it aired, I was 24 years old.
Okay. What were you doing like before then? Were you in the modeling industry yet?
Well, let me tell you. My grandmother had a beauty salon in Harlem since 1920s, 30s.
Oh, wow.
She started off, if I'm correct, in 124th Street, 114th Street, then 116th Street, across the street from Canaan Baptist Church.
Okay, so Grandma was part of the Harlem Renaissance.
Yes, she was. Most of my life was based with my great-grandmother. Totally a New York girl.
Yeah.
Went to a variety of schools. You know, I got very early into theater, dance, sports. Thought I was going to be an Olympic star. Somehow the modeling game caught me. So here I was, 19 years old. That was the first time that I started thinking, because I grew up in a beauty salon and I thought about it, like, do I want to do hair? I was at a place where, you know, you can't just make this quarter every week. You know, I'm starving over
You
here.
need more than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I ended up becoming a makeup artist really because I was talented and I can make quick money. Back in the day, being a makeup artist or working in restaurants, you can really make great money.
Yeah.
So
Especially in New York City.
Exactly. I had a friend that was a makeup artist and she said to me, you know, you're just so good with colors. And I never did it before. And out of nowhere, Mac called me in. She had secretly put my resume in and they called me. I ended up bringing my best friend and slayed her face and got the job and ended up learning online and watching my friends that would teach me because I had no license, but I was hired as a freelance makeup artist. So I made it work.
Yeah.
And amazing experience doing that. I got thrown into doing Fashion Week and someone just, as soon as I walked in, they started saying, you know, why are you doing makeup? You need to be on somebody's runway. It was like overnight, all of a sudden, when I changed my universe and world by moving into the makeup world, being in fashion. And I didn't know what modeling was. I knew that I saw Naomi Campbell or Tyra Banks on TV, but not a runway show.
But you never considered it for yourself?
No.
Wow.
I was more thinking of my height for Olympics. So I started from there, and I was about 20. And it was about a year or so before America's Next Top Model, and I decided to start auditioning. And that was my first start to finding out anything about modeling after that show. And I went to 5 different agencies, and each agency said the same thing. Wow, you have such a great look, but we don't have a place for you. I mean, I would come in, they would give me a tour. I was thinking I was about to be signed. It was almost like a curiosity. And a lot of those auditions back in the day was very public. It wasn't something like quiet where you go into an office like you're doing a regular interview. You go in, it's a group of girls, the whole agency, you walk out, everybody knows you didn't get signed. You know, so, you know, it's kind of a little brutal. But anyway, so I go and when I wasn't signed or I didn't receive opportunity, people would stay and would talk about it. Like, you didn't get signed? Why? And I started realizing that, you know what, there's other things going on here. And I'm going to sit back, and I realized that if this is about my race, my color, that's something that I honor, and I'm not here to change that. So,
but you know, you mentioned that's the very reason why Tyra Banks wanted to produce something like America's Next Top Model, right?
Exactly.
So did that give you the aspiration to audition in the first place?
You hit it on the nail. When I literally 2 weeks before, I decided no more auditioning. I was like, I've done this for a year now. Everybody, I'm not getting anything like you don't have the look. But I knew that there was a place for me. So in my mind, it didn't deter me. It made me feel like, oh, I'm a creative place. I recognized the concept that Tyra was saying she was going to represent. I really didn't watch her as a model. I didn't know much about her history, but I knew at that time she was making a change.
So Top Model, in your opinion, was meant for you?
Yes, absolutely. And I knew I was going to be on it.
Yeah. And you know, representation is everything, right? You were one of 4 Black women in that first cycle of the show. And there's been a lot of discourse about how poorly the show has aged. I mean, from makeovers to people not understanding your moisturizing routine. But did you feel like there were like cultural differences in the show that really affected and impacted you?
Yes. But there's so many layers in this. And I'm going to sum it up. And I think for the time at 2003 wasn't acceptable. I think that's one of the things people are battling right now. We're revisiting the show. And I think it's 2 different generations with 2 different opinions.
Absolutely.
And when I tell you 23 years later, I don't feel forgotten at all. It is an everyday thing on the train, the bus. It's constant conversation. So
because you look the same.
Thank you so much. But I also love that it's infusing the conversation that we are having right now. When I think about being on America's Top Model 23 years ago and today, the big conversation is, did we know better? That is very important. So for me, there is no, it was 10 years ago, it was 20. That's ridiculous. We were conscious in 2000.
Did you feel like Did you feel comfortable standing like in your own self on the show? Did you feel empowered?
I did feel empowered because I knew that I wasn't going to allow my light to be dimmed. But I definitely think it took away an innocence of being 23 and going in to have fun.
Yeah, because you all were so young.
Yes. And I think having to deal with that back-to-back constant situation, wasn't where society is watching the show and they're going, look at those girls getting an opportunity. They must feel so good. There was none of that for me. And I feel like that's what the producers in Tyra Banks took from me in the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on that theme of culture and identity, we can take it back to your audition. One of the first questions you were asked by Tyra Banks involved your sexuality. Tyra asked if you were comfortable being identified as a lesbian on national television. And, this was 2003. So, the way we talked about sexuality back then was really different, What did it mean to you to be open like that and later share your relationship on the television screen?
Everything was very raw. So when I say that, nothing was pre-planned. So when Tyra Banks, and then meeting her for the first time one-on-one, and her first words are, "So you're gay," I was definitely surprised. I thought at least she'd say, "You're Ebony." When I came in to meet with you and we were preparing for our interview, the first thing you did was say, "Hello, my name. Hello, Ebony." That's what I expected. So when she said that right then and there, it was almost for me in the experience that this is not just a competition. This is not just about ratings. There is a different narrative that's now becoming a little dangerous, and people are choosing not to be conscious of it. Because
you saw that early on.
Yes, very early on. But what I can say is, with that situation, I realized that I was going to have to be okay with who I am, and I knew that I walked on that show with that level of confidence. So. And it was funny because even when she asked me the question, that's why I was very kind of moving on with it. Yes, I'm gay, fabulous. Next. Because I wanted to give people, why are you worried about it? This is, I thought this was a fashion show, but we're going to talk about me being gay, instead of putting me in Vogue. Okay. But, and let me tell you something. I am a comedian. You don't even know what I wanted to say to Tyra Banks at that time, honey. But I was like, let me just play this game, So, and I just hoped in that moment that I represented the gay community well.
Now that I know you a little bit, and know that you grew up in a beauty salon, can we go back to that episode where you had that botched makeover? Were you aware, just looking around the space and looking at the stylist, did you have a feeling?
I'm going to clash the skincare and the hair all together.
Okay.
Growing up in a beauty salon, it was kind of interesting being on set, watching the girls. Robin's hair turned green. There was a lot of things that happened that they didn't show. And going to the beauty salon, I'm sitting there laughing, knowing all the girls are about to look like a hot mess. I'm like, I don't know what's happening here, but I'm thinking it's also part of the test. It's a competition. This is probably part of what they're creating. So as I'm sitting there with gel in my hair and supposed to be at this top salon, realizing, oh my God, the girls, some of them are looking kind of like a hot mess, and watching them having to call other stylists because there's no Black stylists here. But the problem was all of the girls, after being on the show for 2 weeks, were running out of our products. We're young girls.
Yeah.
We're not carrying 2 months worth of moisturizer and shampoo and toothpaste. We ain't got no pads. Where's the hot mess up in here? We running out of salads in the refrigerator. You're giving us a couple of dollars a week. We don't know what's happening. So, and also young girls that are quitting our jobs to take a chance. Oh, layers and layers of young youth being brave, and which I don't think that we got enough credit for, and taking a chance on our dreams. But in that, telling Tyra and needing to make a joke out of it, of how uncomfortable Tyra brought all of us when I was sitting in front of the judges and we're getting critiques. And I think this was the second week, and I couldn't believe what came out of her mouth.
And what exactly did Tyra say?
Now, what she said was, I've been talking to all the judges, and they have been talking about you've been showing up ashy every day. And then I responded and said, well, Tyra, we've run out of products. None of the girls got toothpaste. I said, we in here starving, and everybody starts laughing, because I had to break that ridiculous moment. And I had to bring people back to reality. So then they all started laughing, and Tyra was like, oh, okay, well, I'll get somebody to drive you. And they brought me to Walgreens or Dwayne Reed. And them to sit there and watch me and be talked about and pick over my hair. I remember at that moment not being my natural self, giving my real response. And I knew that my authentic self today is so important, because the reality is I would have never allowed that.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately, I was going to stand up and say, I need Tyra right now.
Yeah.
And where's the next salon? And I would have told them where. We can go to mine.
So I hear you talk about these layers of ridiculousness. Yeah. And what I hear you saying is like you expected more from Tyra Banks as a Black woman.
In 2003, there wasn't an excuse for the directors and the producers not to know how to call a Black salon or how to be able to work with different cultures. You had a show that you created and you put all of your talent, skills, that's what you said, as the director and producers, but you didn't think the girls' basic needs and the way you were going to express their journey, which is part of their culture, because obviously it's their features, their beauty, so I realized the thing that was so unique about it, remember, we were on one of the first 5 reality TV shows.
Yeah.
This is another thing when you have different generations' opinions, where you have even some of the reality judges on America's Top Model have tried to blame the contestants, where we should have known. No, I think for the first 5 episodes, what did we know?
Nothing much.
First of all, I think that when you're taking from 18-year-olds, it just changes the narrative, and it also changes your responsibility. It's just common sense.
Yeah.
And
you were eliminated from the show in episode 4. I want to talk about what life was like for you after the show aired, because like for a lot of the girls, they had to go back to where they came from, but it seems like you just had to hop on the sea and get back to Harlem.
So being from Harlem, and it was kind of interesting because the hotel was on 50-something Street. And at that time, I was in Harlem, but also living in the Bronx with my girlfriend. So when I was eliminated, I ended up staying the night at the hotel. And then from there, my girlfriend picked me up and we drove on home. My experience as an artist afterwards was very interesting. I was lucky enough that I had an agency that signed me. And from there, I started auditioning. So for me, it wasn't about dwelling or even thinking about the anger from that. It was like, okay, now I'm going to move forward. I can use this in publicity. What am I going to do as an actress, as a model? So I wasn't sitting still. Agencies were calling me. They were not necessarily very well known, but there were 2 gentlemen that used to work with ABC, different positions. They decided that they got so angry with the show, they wanted to make a modeling agency. So they came together, launched a modeling agency. I was their first model. In my journey, my plight was not learning to love myself. I went on America's Top Model because I take pride in being Black beauty, which is the meaning of my name, Ebony. And I come from a long line of very powerful women, and not just the women in my family, but my community. I was very confident in myself. I think one of the things that I recognized that was really important in my history and the way I was raised in culture and being an artist, that when I dealt with the situation of being on America's Top Model, I already had an idea. I had an idea of my presence as an artist, and then as a Black artist, as a woman. So I didn't go in without words of education or encouragement. And I think that when we talk about beauty, and I look at Tyra Banks and I look at 23 years later, now her response, I would love to coddle everybody and, in the perfect world. But the real reality is that Tyra Banks did affect people. I think that this is a new time, a new way of looking at things, and we have to be more responsible. I wish our apology could have been more heartfelt.
Yeah.
And I think that the rest of us on the show also take responsibility for being on the show. And I hope that all of us get the healing that's needed.
Yeah. I know that you believe and trust in the universe. Is it safe to say that you don't regret auditioning back in 2003?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
It's been years since the show aired.
Yes.
What are you doing now?
Well, I'm working on an amazing project that I'm really excited about. It's called Rough Skin, and it's a one-woman show. And we're trying to figure out how we're going to go about it. Right now, we're just working on funding and seeing if networks will pick it up. I'm not sure where this beautiful journey is going to bring me, but I have a team that is so supportive and believes in the talents that I have. So that is the dream. The dream is to, and I don't want to just say have my own show. I feel like, I don't know where the universe will bring me, but I'm an actress, I'm a model, I'm a motivational speaker. So I think now in my one-woman show, my goal is to bring laughter to our delusions. I didn't get to really show my full personality on America's Top Model. I'm really crazy, but that's okay. And it's all in a good way.
That's Ebony Haith, artist, performer, and model. You'll notice her from Cycle 1 of America's Next Top Model. Ebony, thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely. I'm so happy that you would have me.
This conversation got us thinking. So much has changed since the early 2000s, but so much hasn't. So we wanted to talk to you, New York City. How has your New York changed? And how hasn't it since those times? Send a voice note or an email to nycnow@wnyc.org. We'd love to hear from you. In fact, we might use your comment in a future episode. Thanks for listening to NYC Now from WNYC. I'm Janae Pierre. Have a nice weekend. We'll be back next week.